client testimonials and case studies are my favorite thing to share on the podcast. And so this week I am joined by one of our FBL students who was looking for a solution to move from a done for you business model into a coach and consultant role. And I know many of you are struggling with the same thing she is. Like, how do I guarantee results? How do I know how to do this, but like, how do I actually teach the clients that I'm going to have to be able to repeat the process that I know to do? So she is sharing it all on this week's episode of the podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear her story. Welcome to another episode of the Best Damn Coach podcast. Today, we're talking all things systems, because I have a systems expert joining me, but we're also talking about the FBL because this week's guest came on as a student and it really was transitioning from this kind of done for you work, like so many of you have shared before, into this coach consultant role. And so we're going to talk about how she helps her clients and how the FBL helped her to kind of step into this new role. So welcome to the show, Diane Lam. I'm so excited to hear.
Hi. So nice to be here. I'm super excited to just kind of share and talk about my experience with the lab and all things systems. So fire away. I cannot wait.
And if you're not watching us on YouTube, you should be, because we're both spotting the bold lip color, or sporting the bold lip today, which we're twinning. And I love your energy. I just want to say that off the get-go, having you in the lab. And then I've had the opportunity to meet you in real life when I spoke at an event. And then you carry around this really cute, glittery, I'm really having a hard time talking today, by the way, glittery rhinestoned basketball purse. And I was like, she is my girl. So just a shout out to your energy. It's like, it's just felt when I interact with you. And I love when people bring that X factor to not just to the show, but to their people too.
Thank you. I mean, I try to show up as best I can. And it's stuff that was stifled a lot when I was like in my 9 to 5. So if I can show it now, like I'm the boss of everything. So
it's so
rhinestone basketballs for everyone.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about what you do. Give us like a rundown of how you came into doing systems work. You were in a 9 to 5, kind of corporate, like that maybe grew your zone of genius, but take us back and bring us to now.
Yeah. So actually systems operational work has been the only thing I've ever done in my entire career. So my entire corporate career was built around managing businesses, creating the vision for a lot of other entrepreneurs. I ran a bunch of hedge funds. I managed a bunch of different businesses for financiers who just wanted to raise money and didn't want to actually run a business. So that's always been my background. And I will tell you that I actually transitioned to corporate when I actually was starting to burn out a little bit. And it was actually a very petty reason. So I gotten to the point where I was a manager in corporate and it was kind of like, well, I have to commit to this or I got to go do something else, like really commit to being a manager, being part of management at a large corporation or do something else. And I was really living my entire life for the 15 days of PTO that was available to me. And there was a period where they were like, well, you are the highest rated person on our team, but your PTO is not approved, even though I was putting it in 6 months in advance and the calendar was clear. And I was so angry in that moment because I was like, you just said that I am the highest rated person on our team, but you won't give me this thing that I really, really live for. So my first endeavor when I started my business was like, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to go in entrepreneurship and I'm going to have unlimited PTO days. That was really the origin story. And that was enough to push me out of that position. And I think it was kind of telling that I didn't really want to stay. I was looking for a reason. And that was the perfect reason that actually moved me into my own business and where I started to run the same kind of business where I've always done operations. I've always built the vision for a lot of entrepreneurs. I was like, well, who says I can't do it for myself? And that's what I really went into and starting a lot of done for you operations. If you give me the idea, you tell me what you want to do, give me the ball, I'll make it happen. And that's what I did for a long time until I realized like, this is not the kind of business that I want. I'm a manager again. Like instead of having one boss, I now have 5 or 6 at a time. And they're all lovely, lovely people. I know that I was really able to help and support them, but it's not what I really wanted for my life. Right. And I really wanted to transition into more of a mentorship, more of a coaching role. And I just didn't seem to come about. It wasn't clear how to do it. I didn't really know if I could do it. And there were just a lot of, I guess, obstacles and self-doubt around I can do it myself, but can I show someone else how to do it. And that's when I actually started to consciously make the decision last year. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I should just go for it and try and trust that I can handle whatever comes up along the way. And I started to really make that transition, I say last January. And that brings me to now where I'm like, okay, we're in it. We're doing the thing. We are only doing mentorship and consulting and advisory. We're not really doing any more like, I'll build those systems for you.
Yeah, it's so good. I have lots of thoughts around this. Before I go deep into like just a systems discussion, I think one of my questions is like, what wasn't working for you around the done for you? You mentioned you were a manager, but like what specifically each day were you like feeling frustrated by in that done for you service role?
I would say the things that really frustrated me were the fact that like we could only help so much because we were not really an integral part of the team. So the way my model worked was like we were the paratroopers. We came in, we built everything, and then we left. But to a certain extent, a lot of our clients were not necessarily ready for that. No matter how fast they grow, no matter what revenue markers they've hit, a lot of them were just not ready to really let go, to trust the systems, to know that, hey, I still have to like show up as a leader here. So it didn't feel like I was supporting them the best that I could, even though they had the full foundation there, right? A lot of them were just not ready to really step into that CEO role. And I didn't have a part of my business to really support them in that way to help them transition from, okay, I've been the person doing everything. Now I got to trust all the people around me and these really intangible things that I can't see systems that are running in the background to run my business. Really? So there wasn't anything for me to really be able to support them in that way. And that was a place where I saw a lot of them were kind of starting to stumble. And it was like, well, how do I help you in this way? Like, I'm not a coach. That's not what my business model is. But I also don't feel good just kind of being like, okay, good luck in life. See you
Yeah.
around. We
Peace
built all the
out.
structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of a big place where it's like, I saw that they were not necessarily as successful managing their own systems or working in it after everything was built. And it just didn't feel good to be like, okay, well, I don't have anything for you. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Okay, let's dive into systems a little bit because you speak to systems. You and I have had a lot of this conversation around the messaging around systems. When you say systems, give us an overview of like what that means for you specifically.
So for me, systems are a sum of parts, right? They're all of the things that in your back end are working together to help you reach your goals. So when we talk about systems in the online space, sometimes we talk about them mostly in pieces, like, oh, well, we need processes like SOPs, or my system is my tech, like my CRM or MailChimp or whatever I'm using for email marketing. Or we're talking about it like, oh, my VA is my system, right? Or we talk about it like automations and funnels. So those are all components of a system because ultimately the goal is to run your business as smoothly and efficiently and probably without you as much as possible. But you need all of those components to actually be able to do it. So when I talk about systems, I'm talking about the combination of those things that are customized to you so that you can actually reach the goals. If you never want to do a sales call, but you still want to sell, if you never want to touch marketing or you only want to deliver group programs, there's a specific combination of processes, people, technology, automations that need to come together for you to be able to do that. So when I talk about systems, I'm talking about that package that comes together so that you can actually have the goal, the end result that you really want.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because when I came into entrepreneurship, I didn't know the word systems, right? Because all of that is like I'm just a baby here. I just know how to like serve the people. I know how to get them results. But what I think, this is just my version of articulating it, is the need for systems is felt before it's known. And what I mean by that is I could feel myself starting to drown, like not keeping up. And I was doing so many things manually. At that point, the only real thing I was using was email. Back in the day when I only did email coaching, my clients would contact me via email. I didn't have a website. I would do the coaching and basically every week I would do a weekly review. Everything was me manually copying, pasting, and doing the things. And I'm like, there is no way that I can keep up. And so I think a lot of listeners listening may be not aware that systems are a next step, but they might feel like I'm drowning. I know there's got to be a way that I can send this without having to like do it manually. There's got to be other mechanisms for success that could allow me to accept more clients. Because I know for me, I realize I'm the bottleneck. right? I am going to be the one that prevents greater success from happening if I don't put some sort of structure, flow, framework, system in place for me to like duplicate myself. And so for me, I didn't know the word systems initially. I just knew that like I needed like some other tech or some things. So if you're listening, this is, I think, where the opportunity has for you is for you to grow into that like CEO space of not just being the coach that's running the business, but starting to think more long term of how can I become a CEO who's aware of the time and the bottlenecks and can find mechanisms or systems that can be behind you to support you, so you can kind of like begin to like let up on that, right, and eliminate that a little bit.
Exactly, exactly. Because it's like you're 100% right when you say it's something you feel more than you see. I hear a lot of people say it's like, it's just that stuff where it's not that bad until you calculate it over the course of like a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, a year. And you're like, oh my gosh, I spend all my time like trying to pull the strings and pull it together in my back end. And there has to be an easier way. And a lot of times people just don't know what they don't know. They don't know what
Yep.
else is possible or what's available.
100% agreed. You don't know what you don't know until you're like, I just need some help to figure something, the next
Yes.
thing out. You mentioned in this kind of done for you service, there was this cap on how many people you could serve, and you didn't feel like you were able to bring in. I mean, I think in all your years of experience, like so many people listening, it's like you knew you could bring more to the table, but the existing business model didn't support that. And you don't want to leave them out there to dry, to be unsuccessful when you know business implementing system is just a part, right? Putting them in place is great, but like if you're not utilizing them and you're not onboarding the team and the people to support the continuation of them, then it's going to fall flat on your face. And so what I hear you saying is like seeing or feeling is there was a lack of scalability too, right? There's no way that you probably could have taken on 10, 20 of those clients in that model and really done the whole thing justice. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially since I didn't want to actually run the agency. I didn't want to be the manager. I just kept falling into it over and over again. Like I got excited when I got to map out, well, what is the system strategy? What is the workflow to get you the result? Like you don't ever want to do a sales call? Okay. How are we going to do that? Like I get excited when I'm like, because there's a million different ways to do it. Let's pick one and like let's make it work. And I found that like when I was working with them for you clients, even at my max, like there, you get a lot of the coaching is like, just raise your prices until people start to say no. And I'm like, not enough people are saying no. And this is not a insignificant investment. And even then it was still a challenge to really be able to serve them without continuing to build the agency, bringing on more people, adding more hierarchy, adding more layers to the business. And that's not what I ultimately wanted for myself really at all. I just kept falling into it.
Yeah. And then we met.
Yeah.
And then you made your way somehow into my world, and you became a student in the Framework Builder Lab. And it was as we were really rolling out our new model, which includes this live coaching element. So I got to see your face for 6 weeks and really be in your business with you as you really were trying to articulate of like, how do I take this to a done for you service where I'm doing the work? I know I can do it. And now step back a little bit and let my people walk through this mechanism that I'm going to create this framework and be kind of the guide that oversees it. So I love to just go back to that moment of like, what made you jump into the Framework Builder Lab? Was it
Well,
that? Like, what was the catalyst?
I'd say that like, well, as soon as I heard you speaking about, well, this is how you tie it back to the results, like having a framework can guide you and like you can know how you're going to get results. Cause I feel like that was the missing piece all the time, especially whenever I tried to make the transition myself. I was like, how will I know I can actually support this person and make sure that they're actually going to get the results? They don't have the experience that I do. So like, can I just tell them and they'll do it? And so those were all of the big question marks that actually really held me back a lot from like fully stepping into and being like, no, we are coaching. That's it. And so as soon as I heard you talking about like, oh, this is how you create results consistently, I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like whatever it is, join email list immediately. Wait for next launch.
Oh, I love that. I mean, this is actually a soapbox like that I want, like, this is a pet peeve in the industry because a lot of coaches will just like hang their hat on, well, it's the client's job to create results. Yes. And if you have a fluffy, no good delivery of how they get there, then it's actually not just their job. Right. And so that's something that obviously I'm passionate about, is creating just even the thought for us to think about as practitioners of what are the tangible outcomes? How will Diane know that the thing she wants to teach her people, they're actually going to get, instead of just, throwing spaghetti at the walls and winging it along the way? And so I think that like it's such a important part of the coaching industry right now, is that it's not enough to say, I am the guru, my client figures it out. Our job as the guide is to map it out before they begin, so we have some sort of semblance that will guarantee consistent results. And I mean, I think this is the problem with the coaching world right now in general. So, we can put a pin on that conversation for like a 10-hour debate later, but I love that you are results driven is my whole point in saying that.
Yeah. And I will say that like I've, been in different programs, right, where they say like, oh, you just write out your steps to how you produce results. That's your framework. That's your process. And it never gave me enough confidence. I'm like, this is how I do it. But I also have a lot of experience and a lot of just like, I just know because I've gone through this multiple times with different people. So I know what funnel is going to work, what automation is going to work. But it didn't give me enough confidence to be like, oh, okay, I can show you how to do it. I can tell you, and you'll be able to build the one that's going to work for you. And so I think coming into the Framework Builder Lab, where you actually tied them to the results, where you actually showed me how to develop it in a way that, oh, it became really, really clear that I'm actually going to be able to help people very specifically, like that I've never seen in kind of any program I've ever been in.
Well, that makes my heart so happy. Yay. I mean, and that's one of the big feedbacks, right, of the lab. Tell me more about, if you don't mind, just like what was another breakthrough, or what was maybe your greatest aha moment? Maybe that is the aha moment inside the lab that really helped you be prepared to move into this coach and consultant role.
Well, I would say first and foremost, it was like the reverse engineering, right, of the results. So it's like, okay, well, what is it that I want to help people with? And how do I actually do that? And really categorizing and putting some real structure around it. Because I could see the through line then. I'm like, oh, this makes sense. I can teach to this, and I can, advise them to this, and that will create the result, right? So I think that was one of the major pieces. But also I think that you throw in a lot about, what is this person doing right now? A lot of messaging components that, yes, I'm a lifelong learner. I like to master the thing that I am doing. So I've done a lot of extensive study in like messaging. How do we put these together? How do we like work in messaging? And out of every messaging course or program or, consultancy I've ever worked in, I think the way that you taught it and the flow through your S-curve messaging, I was like, oh my gosh, this is hitting everything that I used to have to cover in like that 16-page workbook, but in like literally a page and a half, right? And it made it so clear how I'm speaking to this person and the way that I'm moving them through the actual symptoms, to their feelings, to like the results that they actually want to desire. I'm like, oh, this like took everything that I ever learned in, other messaging programs and really condensed it into a couple of like pages. Like mine is a page and a half. Like it didn't fit in the one page. But I was like, this is a lot simpler and easier to pull from than, a lot of the other frameworks I learned in the past around messaging. So I think that was another massive piece where I was like, I didn't just get the framework piece. I'm like, oh, you taught me how to talk about it in a really in a way that actually connected with people. And I wasn't expecting that, but I'm glad that I got it.
Yay. Over deliver. That makes me happy. Where'd you land on, like, did you find like a name that resonates with you, a visual representation? Like, tell me more about what having a framework now has made possible for you.
So I did create, so I went through, like, this is actually probably one of the very, very few programs I could probably count in less than top three of like number of programs that I've bought in that I've actually completed all of the modules, right? And I think that speaks a lot to like how you designed it and how well you know how to like present this information to bring someone through it. But I will say that like I did the framework visualization and like I didn't think that would be as helpful for me because I'm not someone like I know it so closely. I'm like, I don't need to see it. I already see it like every time I close my eyes. I don't need to see it. But I used it in a workshop that I did, and like everyone was like, oh, that's what you
Yay!
mean. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is very helpful for people. This is for them to see the visual representation of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, oh, systems have four components. And so that was like a
Oh,
big
that makes me
moment.
so happy for you because that's a breakthrough. I don't know if you know this. I'm writing a book about frameworks, which is kind of new in my world. So every
Ooh,
time I hear these anecdotal stories about the power of visuals, I'm like, we're missing this, friend. So I'm so glad that you like opened your mind to be able to consider the possibilities of what just having some sort of visual to represent your process looks like.
exactly. It's like I would not have thought about it. And honestly, like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. I'm too close to it,
Yes.
so I can't see it. But other people, the people I want to help, they don't see it at all. So I have to show them, right? And I was like, oh, okay, got it. And I was glad that I
Yeah.
had already something prepared, that I already had it on hand, and I could just stick it into the presentation. And it made so much sense. Like people were like, yes, okay, I get it now. Like I kind of had it when you were talking the words at me, but I really got it now that like I can see it.
So good. So good. Um, and so, how's it going now that you have this framework? You've launched this new model. Tell me more about what's possible for you.
I feel like at this point, like I have fully stepped into it. Like there's no more like, oh, well, maybe we'll leave the door open for like some other stuff. Maybe if I have to, I'll go back to like the done for you or, back to the agency if I really have to. But I feel like I'm able to really step into this because it was a big question mark if I could produce results, right, in this way. And I just didn't know how to deal with it. And this shift in my business has been like what, 3, 4 years in the making. I just didn't know how to do it. And every time I tried to put my toes into it, I just didn't know. I'm like, could I actually do this? Can I actually create results? And now I feel so confident that I absolutely can because I know the process that I'm going to take people through to do it. And it's not just like, oh, well, first I do this, this, and this. It's like, no, no, no. This is what we're doing. And these are the elements that I'm teaching and presenting that I'm giving them to be able to make sure that they are successful. And then I could feel good saying, like, okay, if you literally do zero, like, well, I tried to meet you at the 50-yard line and
Yeah.
you didn't come the rest of the way. So that is a piece that I will like hold on to forever. And it is showing kind of in the transition that I made in my business because I'm like, I originally, I did want to move to groups and I just didn't know how. This is the model because I'm like, oh, I have the
Oh, I
framework that will
remember.
allow me
Yes.
to actually work with more than one person at a time, right? So this can apply to multiple people. I can teach it in a group setting, and so this is like my scalability right here in
Yes.
this one, two, three, four, five pieces of paper all together. Is like this is how I create the business that I actually want, and I scale it because I can have that group model that I was just like I just don't know how it's possible. I don't
How
know
it's
how it's
going to
possible.
feel. Yeah. I think that's the undervalued thing of what happens when you invest in various coaching programs. I have a really hard time. I mean, I make it available because people have asked for it. Like, hey, just this passive consumption of a course, because for the reasons you said, I'm aware that at least the trend from my perspective and the research we're doing is that people are moving away from purchasing passive courses because they acknowledge they won't do the work. There's some that are still in that pattern or whatever. So I try not, or I don't want necessarily a business that solely relies on that because I love that human interaction and the way the FBL Live is structured in such a way that we can get that, right? It's like short, sweet, potent to the point, let's go in. But I've heard from so many that come into that program specifically of like, it was kind of like this door was opened of like, oh, this is a model that I could repeat. And I think sometimes we don't realize that making investments show a behind the scenes look into other people's deliverables, the way they present, and it inspires us to be more like that person. Like we have another student in the lab was like, being in the lab makes me want to have be a coach that has a framework and like this experience and the way it's chunked out into bite-sized pieces. And so sometimes we go in with an expectation, and hopefully, at least if you're in my world, I over deliver on that in many ways. But I think there's so much value in just being inside of other people's worlds because you kind of get a glimpse into their brain and their structure too. And you're like, oh, this could work for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so glad that I got it because like that's ultimately what I wanted for myself, for my business. I just never saw a way to be able to do it. And as you 100% opened up the possibilities. in my business because I'm like, I know exactly how we can do it. I know exactly how a group model will work. I know exactly how I'll go one to many and still keep the quality.
Yes.
So that is where it's like, oh, this is very exciting.
I
This
love
is
that for you.
exciting.
Yay. I'm so excited for you. What's a big client win you've had lately?
A big client win. Let's think about this one because I just finished up my launch accelerator. So that was a program where it's like I think a lot of people have this misconception. I have people come in there who are coaches who are like, I have a coach who told me that here's the framework for launching, but I still don't know how to launch, right? And being able to take them through the process. I think one person told me they're like, I didn't know that launching could be simple, could be this easy. And it really can be simple. Like your whole back end, everything that you do about how you execute or run and operate your business can be simple if you want it to be, right? It can be as complex and as high tech as you want it to be, or it can be as low tech and simple as you want it to be as well. And so I think that that's being like, oh wow, I didn't think I could do this without, setting up a whole new like Kajabi site, a bunch of landing pages, 100 emails. I'm like, it doesn't have to be that. You can have a smaller launch and you can still just be successful. It's just you just have to hit the pillars along the way. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that felt really good. I'm like, wow, I'm teaching them the thing and they're getting it and they can pick and choose the level that they want to be at, whether super complex or super simple. And so
Yeah.
I feel like that is like real validation that like this works. A, I have the process and the framework to make it happen. And B, my approach is something that is really supportive for people who are wanting to do more in their businesses. So I think that that was like that was a big win for me because I'm like, oh,
I'm
I'm
so
so glad.
happy.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you. It's just so cool when in the entrepreneurship space, we literally have a vision and we can build it from scratch. And then we see it realized right before our eyes and people come through it and they're having results. And you're like, man, this is like my little footprint on the earth of impact to be able to like move other women. I mean, I'll speak to women because that's mostly who I work with, but like move women along in their dreams and get them closer to realizing that. And I think the tech and the systems space is such a, like you said, they don't know what they don't know until they do, and that creates that flow instead of that bottleneck. So I'm so happy for you.
I'll say, yeah, I'll give you credit for it too.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm just here being a little cheerleader behind you and all the things. So I would love though for you to share more about your work so anybody listening can connect with you. If you're interested in the FBL, I hope it's fine if they reach out to you and ask
Oh
questions
yeah,
even.
absolutely.
So give us a shout out. You do have to check out her IG because I love she shows up on IG with fire for sure. But send us to all the places we can connect with you.
So Instagram is my primary home place. If you want to really get to know me and like what I'm up to during the day, what sheet mask I'm wearing the evening before, you want to hang out with me on Instagram. I'm at dianelam.co. And one of the other, no, that's the only place I hang out. Actually, like I'm like, where else do I hang out? I really am only on Instagram.
That's where all the cool people hang out, I've heard. And you said your website too, or is that
Oh,
just
my
your website?
website is dianelam.com. I have some good stuff on there as well. But
Perfect.
yeah, keep up with me on the day to day on Instagram.
I love it. I'm so grateful, Diane, that you came and joined us, and grateful that you could share your story. Pumped for you of all your success. And again, just thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Amazing coaches. I hope Diane's inspired you to have a framework. And I love her story because she's come from this expert business model, but also wants to shift into a new model to support her long-term vision. And I know many of you are in that same place. So if you're interested in learning more about the lab, head on over to amanda-walker.com/lab. You can get all the details between our live and our independent study versions. And I will be back next week, same time, same place. And until then, go coach them up.